Lieutenant Colonel David Oberhettinger. He serves as the Chief Knowledge Officer of the NASA/Caltech Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Additional duties for the JPL Office of the Chief Engineer include managing the JPL Engineering Standards Office and the JPL Spaceflight Engineering Research Program, and chairing the JPL Lessons Learned Committee. Formerly, he managed the Spacecraft Engineering Technology Department of Northrop Grumman. Technical work for Northrop Grumman in support of JPL included serving as risk manager for the Jovian Icy Moons Orbiter, mission study contract, and chairing a JPL failure review board. He presently serves on the board of directors of the 2016 Reliability and Maintainability Symposium and is Group 1 Aerospace Education Officer. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Colonel David Oberhettinger.
Thanks. The distance between Earth and Mars varies from 55 million kilometers to 410 million kilometers. So in the latter case, it takes maybe a couple years to get to Mars, and then you have a couple, maybe 10 years in the case of a rover of operations on Mars. But from the 2 years, say, it gets to Mars, before it can start its 10 years, it's got to achieve Mars orbit and descend to the surface of Mars. That entry, descent, and landing takes about 9 hours, and of the 9 hours, the last 7 minutes, what we commonly refer to as at JPL as the 7 minutes of terror, encompasses about 90% of the risk in the entire, in this case, 12-year mission. So there's some people from my colleagues express it better than I do. I'll show you a short video.
When people look at it, it looks crazy. That's a very natural thing. Sometimes when we look at it, it looks crazy. It is the result of reasoned engineering thought. But it still looks crazy. The top of the atmosphere, down to the surface, it takes us 7 minutes. It takes 14 minutes or so for the signal from the spacecraft to make it to Earth. That's how far Mars is away. So when we first get word that we touched the top of the atmosphere, the vehicle has been alive, or dead, on the surface for at least 7 minutes.
Entry, descent, and landing, also known as EDL, is referred to as the 7 minutes of terror, because we've got literally 7 minutes to get from the top of the atmosphere to the surface of Mars, going from 13,000 miles an hour to 0 in perfect sequence, perfect choreography, perfect timing, and the computer has to do it all by itself with no help from the ground. If any one thing doesn't work just right, it's game over.
We slam into the atmosphere and develop so much aerodynamic drag. Our heat shield, it heats up and it glows like the surface of the sun. 1,600 degrees.
During entry, the vehicle is not only slowing down violently through the atmosphere, but also we are guiding it like an airplane to be able to land in a very narrow constraint space. This is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing, and one that we have never attempted on Mars.
Mars is actually really hard to slow down because it has just enough atmosphere that you have to deal with. Otherwise, it will destroy your spacecraft. On the other hand, it doesn't have enough atmosphere to finish the job. We're still going about 1,000 miles an hour. So at that point, we use a parachute.
The parachute is the largest and strongest supersonic parachute that we've ever built to date. It has to be able to withstand 65,000 pounds of force, even though the parachute itself only weighs about 100 pounds.
When it opens up that fast, it's a neck-snapping 9 Gs.
At that point, we have to get that heat shield off. It's like a big lens cap blocking our view of the ground to the radar. The radar has to take just the right altitude and velocity measurements at just the right time, or the rest of the landing sequence won't work.
this big, huge parachute that we've got, it will only slow us down to about 200 miles an hour. And that's not slow enough to land. So we have no choice, but we've got to cut it off and come down in rockets. Once we turn those rocket motors on, we don't do something. We're just going to smack right back into the parachute. So the first thing we do is really radical diversion. We fly off to the sun.
Diverting away from the parachute, killing our horizontal velocity and our vertical velocity, getting the rover moving straight up and down so it can look at the surface with its radar and see where we're going to land. So we head straight down to the bottom of the crater, right beside a 6-kilometer high mountain.
We can't get those rocket engines too close to the ground, because if we were to descend propulsively with our engines all the way to the ground, we would essentially create this massive dust cloud. That dust cloud would then go and land on the rover, it could damage mechanisms, it could damage instruments. So the way we solve that problem is by using the sky crane.
20 meters above the surface, we have to lower the rover below us on a cabin that's 21 feet long, and then gently deposit it on its wheels on the surface.
As the rover touches down and is now on the ground, the descent stage is in a collision course with the rover. We must cut the bridle immediately and fly the descent stage to a safe distance from the rover.
When we first proposed to NASA headquarters that, the Curiosity rover weighs about the size and almost the weight of a Mini Cooper. And so it was too heavy to bring down in airbags like we brought previous rovers to the surface on to slow the terminal descent just before touchdown. And when we told headquarters that our solution was a sky crane that would hover 100 feet off the surface of Mars and then lower the rover down on cables and cut the cables and then fly off downrange somewhere, they thought we were a little nuts there. Rather jaundiced view of that. And answer is we just tested it very extensively and we really believed in that solution. So it's my great privilege to be part of the only team that will be the first to explore the solar system. And I thank each of you for paying your taxes so I can do this. Working directly for the chief engineer at the field center charged with space exploration, I'm involved daily in the engineering details of exploring planets. I guess I was inspired by Star Trek, where the Enterprise had a mission that was essentially benevolent to boldly go where no one has gone before. So I'm somewhat intrigued by the question of why do we explore? After all, there's generally a reason why no one has gone there before, because there is usually a scary place to go. It's unknown and hostile territory, hostile to humans, hostile to robots. So why do we leave home to explore? At JPL, we like to say we visited every planet except Pluto, and we fixed that. No longer planet. Some JPL firsts. In 1958, Explorer 1 was the first satellite launched by the United States. In 1965, we did the first flyby of Mars. The following year, the first U.S. Soft landing on the moon. Then Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 accomplished the grand tour of the solar system. Last August, we determined that 2 years previously, Voyager 1 had left the heliosphere, left the solar system, and is now operating in interstellar space. Mars Pathfinder became the first planetary rover in 1997, and we now have 2 vehicles operating on Mars. deep impact slammed a copper penetrator into a comet to see what it's composed of, and so on. Today, JPL is flying and driving more spacecraft than ever before in its history. Over 24 spacecraft, including 2 rovers on Mars, are still in operation. And on the right there, several JPL science instruments, which Daniel is very familiar with, can be found aboard other non-JPL spacecraft. One mission that really fascinates me over here in purple, Kepler, the purple icon at the top of the chart there. The Spacefaring Observatory has detected dozens of planets orbiting distant stars that are located in the habitable zone, meaning that they're the right distance from the sun and the right atmospheric pressure to have liquid water on the surface. And we've seen some very hostile Earth environments like the deepest ocean depths where you have water and energy, then you have life. The Kepler spacecraft has identified an additional 54 candidates. I think that's out of date. I think it's more now. And extrapolation suggests that the Milky Way has at least 8.8 billion Earth-sized planets in a solar habitable zone and capable of life. The Curiosity rover is probably the best known of our current missions. It's been on Mars 2.5 years. Size of a Mini Cooper, as I said, almost as heavy. And it was too heavy to land on airbags, so we used the sky crane to lower it to the surface of Mars. It's nuclear powered to provide enough juice for a full suite of instruments. Some ask, isn't it less risky for robots like this one to explore instead of humans? If Christopher Columbus had access to robotic ships, they might have proved useful. But at some point, Queen Isabella would have had to have sent out the wetware. Right? So robots make excellent pathfinders, but they don't substitute for a human presence. A future where 500 years from now, the heavens are full of robotic probes while we stay safely at home doesn't really inspire me. So, why do we explore? Astronauts today take the level of risks that are always faced by explorers. Non-military astronauts are actually on the federal civil service salary schedule. Their salary ranges, I think, from like $65,000 to about $142,000, about what a JPL engineer earns. So their compensation may be roughly comparable with that of an experienced sailor serving under Magellan or Christopher Columbus. Space is a vastly hostile environment for humans. And the loss of astronauts aboard the Challenger and Columbia shuttles demonstrates the risk of human exploration. Aboard the International Space Station, there's always a Soyuz escape capsule in standby mode in case of an emergency. But if humans explore Mars, there will be no such quick return to Earth. Now, the robotic probes that JPL sends out are quite happy in the cold of vacuum, but they also face risks. When the Magellan probe descended into the atmosphere of Jupiter, we knew it would decelerate at 230 Gs, 230 gravities, and the heat shield protecting the electronics would heat up to twice the temperature of the surface of the sun. The Russians and Europeans have, by my count, sent 21 missions to Mars, and those missions have had a 100% failure rate. So, why do we explore? Why do we assume such risks? Well, there's fear. No one in my village has ever ventured over the hill. There may be something on the other side that could harm us. And then there's pride. I'm going over the hill, because that will make me the first in my village ever to do so. So let's look at exploration in practical terms. Do our due diligence and consider return on investment. Now, Queen Isabella turned down Columbus's proposal several times until their private treasurer pointed out that the sailor's request amounted to less than the cost of entertaining a visiting noble for 1 week in Queen Isabella's court. So what other risks did she, the Queen, face other than her capital investment? Well, to a 15th century queen, over there, the lives of astronauts were important. Common sailors and an Italian navigator were quite expendable. So, on the other hand, what did she stand to gain? We're told that she was seeking cheaper pepper. Cheaper pepper. Black pepper was very expensive. And so she sought a more direct route to suppliers in India. So what was the accrued return on investment? Well, Spain gained an empire, and humanity as a whole gained a new world to be known as the New World, though granted not new to the then current inhabitants. So the ROI could be viewed as infinite, since the inhabitants of the New World are now exploring new worlds like Mars. The intangible desire to explore and challenge the boundaries of what we know and where we have been has provided benefits to our society for centuries. So, fear and pride doesn't really explain a Neil Armstrong or even an Elon Musk. The astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson says, quote, "A passion for exploration is the fuel to an innovative economy." Tyson points out that private enterprises like Elon Musk, SpaceX, Google, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, they're all investing their time and money in space ventures. Sir Richard Branson founded Virgin Galactic and Space Adventures, companies that offer space tourism opportunities for non-scientists. Space tourism is forecast as a $1 billion per year industry, and a little imagination suggests that the material return from space exploration will dwarf the return from the exploration of the Americas. On the other hand, neither does return on investment, any more than pride and fear, explain the motivations of a Neil Armstrong or a Chuck Yeager. None of these folks were seeking profit, and I suspect that entrepreneurs like Musk, Bezos, and Branson are not interested in the space business chiefly for profit. I think they tell you that there are much easier ways and more reliable ways to make money than investing in rockets. Many say that our public investment in space exploration would be better spent on building housing for the poor. And that's a decision that's appropriately made by you in the audience. I can tell you that NASA is making and continuing to make discoveries that will benefit humanity. But in essence, we explore not because it's easy, but because it's difficult. Sir Edmund Hillary undertook the first ascent to Mount Everest for the challenge, but perhaps some things are worth doing because they're difficult. I've given presentations in other countries, and the U.S. is highly respected for our space exploration that's served humanity for mostly altruistic reasons. It's your passion for seeing new places and expanding knowledge that explains why we as a species explore. To walk, we have to lean forward, lose our balance, and begin to fall. We let go constantly of the previous stability, falling all the time, into the unknown, trusting that we will find a succession of new stabilities with each step. This letting go of the previous stabilities opens us up to new comfort zones and new possibilities about what it means to be human. Humanity's interest in the heavens has been universal and enduring. Ancient civilizations speculated about the cosmos, and our early scientific efforts focused on astronomy. Humans are driven to explore the unknown, discover new worlds, push the boundaries of our scientific and technical limits, and then push further. Space exploration helps to address fundamental questions about our place in the universe. Are we alone? Might earthbound humanity expand beyond its current limits? This is the first photograph of our home taken from another world. It was taken from lunar orbit on December 24th, 1968 by astronaut William Anders during the Apollo 8 mission, the first manned voyage to orbit the moon. And later in the Apollo program, there were amazing images of astronauts walking on the moon, but there is no underestimating the impact of this photo when it was seen worldwide. A common expression during the 1930s was, "That is as crazy as going to the moon." It was this photo, looking back at Earth from the perspective of another land, that not only changed what was considered crazy, but gave humans a new understanding of who we are, and perhaps who we might be.